Hello and welcome back to the Shmuseum, where today I'm joined by Püppi.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the spec options and colour choices of the Shmeemobiles.
Because specking cars is one of my favorite things to do, and out of all the cars you see here, I either spec them or I at least had a say in it.
Certainly a big influence, including the cars for the future. So we're going to be running through what's behind the garage as a whole when we're choosing different colours, when we're choosing different configurations, when we're going for some bespoke options. What are we thinking about? What makes us decide to go for different colours on different cars? We'll have a run through that. But before we do so, I want to pop back here where you will see our 100k balloons. It is a huge thanks to the over 100,000 of you guys who have subscribed to the Shmuseum channel. A huge thanks to each and every one of you. This is absolutely crazy. A big thanks. And also back here, you'll spot that we've tidied things up a little bit. Thanks to the new storage racks that I picked up from eBay Small Businesses and plenty of other things as well. We've tidied up a touch and made it a little bit more like a man cave. Plus, this is quite fun. These are the original banners from Bucharest in Romania on the 2016 Gumball 3000. So I've had those for 5 years, having brought them back from the end of the rally, kept them, and now perfect to display. And I've got a few other things like that as well. We've also back here got all of the storage garage stuff. This will all move in due time, the tyres, wheels, some nice lights and display items as well. Plus we picked up some trestle tables to store the various car parts. So this is all going to get much more tidied up down the line. Obviously big plans for what we're going to do with the office and mezzanine space. But today's video, as I said, is all about car specs, and in particular where it began really when we were speccing this at the beginning of 2016.
Yes, that's been a long time ago. It doesn't feel that old though.
And this is the oldest, it's not the oldest car, it's the car that I've owned for the longest in the collection, 5 and a bit years. And at the time I picked up the Spider, obviously we had the coupe.
Yes.
And the 675 LT coupe in cerulean blue was always going to be a tough spec to beat. Now at the time, we knew that I had my letter of intent down for McLaren's codename P15, a car that would become the Senna, and the intention was to do that in cerulean blue. So we were thinking what to do with this.
This should be a different color, yeah.
Something different, and I've always had a soft spot for purple, so we started looking at purples, and this is where it gets quite fun, because when you talk to people like MSO, McLaren Special Operations, and other manufacturers operate very similar things at this end of the market, they kindly put together different paint samples for you. And this is where, if I just grab these boxes, I'll leave that one with you for the moment. Effectively, I picked out a few different options myself initially. I think we were both happy to go for a purple on the car.
Yes.
But I started working through them and creating some different colours. So this, for example, was effectively a bespoke colour we made. I was going to nickname it Night Blue, which was modelled on BMW's San Marino Blue, which is a colour I've always really quite liked. We got a spray out of that. I'll give you that one. We then got this one, which is quite funny actually. This is a McLaren colour called Burton Blue. Now my surname is Burton, and a lot of people think that that colour from McLaren has something to do with me. It actually doesn't at all. It's just complete coincidence, but it's a very nice colour nonetheless. So maybe one day I'll have to have a car in Burton Blue. And then the third one that we have here that we didn't choose is Lantana Purple, which is an MSO defined colour that they offer, but quite often in photos, and this is what I had originally been thinking, do you remember this? This comes out really blue. When you take a photo of this, it never looks as purple as it is.
But purple in general is a very hard color to photograph.
It's a really hard color to get right. Thank you very much, which is what ended us up, and I do have the frog, as they're called, for Orion Purple, which is exactly what we've gone for here. We tried out a number of different purples. We eventually came, as you can see if you look very closely at it, to this color that has effectively a blue sparkle in it in the same color as cerulean blue, which is really nice with the metallic fleck when you look at it very closely. And the result of that was effectively making a one-off color and being able to give it its own name, and you're responsible for the name.
It was very difficult to find a name for it though, because obviously I've never named a car color before, and I wanted to give it a smart name that would do the paint justice. And yeah, in the end we named it Orion Purple after the Orion Nebula.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very fitting name, given that the nebula is quite purple but also has those blue sparks. It's what they call it, the stellar nursery where new stars are born, and I find this for the color and especially for the car, it's quite a good name.
So the fun thing about that actually is out of all of the cars in the garage, the first, or the one that we configured the longest to go, is the only one that's in a bespoke color.
Yeah, that's true. We need to do that again. I like that process.
It is a fun process. It is quite complicated. Obviously, when it comes to the other spec options, as we talked about with the Senna and various different things like the SF90 recently, I love carbon fiber, so all of the exterior carbon. Sometimes I like the mix of the satin carbon finish against the purple. And with this car, you can see actually after delivery, we added the pinstripes. And we added the pinstripes in the silver to match with the wheels, the calipers, and the interior.
And you know what's quite interesting about the pinstripes? Sometimes on the Shmeemobiles, I post pictures of the car without the pinstripe.
Yeah.
And people really point it out and say there's something missing. Or I prefer it with the silver stripes because it just brings it all together.
It's mad actually to think. I think probably for only about the first 2 months it didn't have the silver stripes, but that was a paint scheme that McLaren actually offered, and I didn't go for, but with hindsight I probably would have done, although the vinyl stripes actually look pretty nice. So
they have held up very well.
They have held up very, very well. So the LT was 5.5 years ago, we were speccing it. This was a few months after, the Aston GT8. Now this is a funny one because I was set on the cobalt blue,
yes,
the paint colour. That was kind of, for me, no choice. Having owned my original V8 Vantage Roadster over there in glacial blue, the much lighter metallic blue, that car was actually superseded at the time by the V8 Vantage S, which launched in cobalt blue. And I thought if I ever bought another Aston Martin, cobalt blue would be the right colour. But I was actually originally going to do it with a different colour accent. I was going to do it with silver contrast instead of the Golf orange.
And I thought that was boring because this is a race-derived car, right? And if there's any type of car where you can go for a crazy color scheme, then that's a race car. Or something that's derived of, let's say, a GT3 car. And I remember the speccing process. We were at Aston Martin and Gaydon, and it was a lot of fun because you can play with the color samples and the stitchings and everything. And we got the cobalt blue out and the silver, and I was just like, that doesn't do the car any justice. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a lovely combination, but I was like, no, it needs to be a bit more ostentatious in a way.
When it's got things like a big wing on the back and this super aggressive diffuser and the side skirts that stick out like this, and just behind the front wheels, this cutaway that's inspired from the GTE race car, adding a contrast really gave it another dimension, a stronger contrast,
yes,
I should say.
But also the first idea we had was going with yellow.
Yes.
And then I was like, might look a bit like an IKEA car.
An IKEA car or Bilstein Racing or all sorts of different things.
There was a Bilstein Aston Martin GT3 or GTE car. I remember them racing at the Nürburgring. That looked really good, actually.
So the kind of fun thing is, and this has really triggered a theme through the colours that you see in the garage, is this dual tone.
Yeah.
In some ways similar to famous racing teams. This is clearly blue and orange. We know there's a very famous blue and orange race team, but with a different colour blue despite the accent being officially in the right orange. And it creates a modernised take on it, and that's something obviously that we get to with the Ford GT and we get to with some of the other specs as well going forwards. But I think with the GT8, it was then again a case of carrying the spec through, because you don't just want to put, let's say, a splash of colour on the exterior and completely ignore it from there on. You need to bring it through the whole car. So as well as the orange accents, we have the orange calipers, we have the orange stitching, we have the orange door grab pulls, we have the orange headrest embroideries.
Yes.
A few more touches that bring it all together.
It's very nice to bring in like the exterior colours also to the interior.
And it works really well. If you have, like both of these two cars exemplify this, if you have a main body colour and a secondary colour, you know, the orange and the silver, it gives you that perfect way to bring that into the car, to carry that colour through. And I think, you know, that's something I always work on a lot when I'm brainstorming my initial ideas.
What we did the other day, for example.
Exactly. And we add some extra touches. Now, what came after those? The Heritage Focus RS.
I think, yes.
The bright orange of the Heritage Focus RS. Now, this car we didn't get to spec at all. They came like this, 50 cars, teeth orange. That was the historical colour of the 1968 Escort Mark I. There are 50 of these, 50th anniversary. It came like that.
There was not much to do. But then we changed the brake calipers.
We did. We added some orange brake calipers because the original ones are just the unpainted grey and they look a little bit messy, whereas these in the body colour look significantly nicer and match the car basically an awful lot more. We come on then to three of the most iconic Shmeemobile specifications, three totally unique specifications, the Ford GT, the Senna and the SLS Black Series. And I think the GT is probably your favourite.
Absolutely. Always was, always will be.
For this car, I had pretty much set my heart on in terms of what I was going to do with it the day that it was revealed, more or less. As soon as they put up a configurator online, I was playing around. I never got to see what the liquid red would look like in person, but it's a very similar idea to what we were just saying with the GT8. It's a modern take on a historical race team colour scheme, in this case Alan Mann Racing with the red and gold, the more modern red paint, and the exact Alan Mann Racing gold. And we even got the sample of that as well from Multimatic, from Ford, to paint those stripes. This was, I think, probably an easier spec, if I can say, because I kind of said this is what you want.
Yes, and I also think that there's some cars where you have loads of options, where you can choose so many different things. And with that, I don't think there were that many opportunities and possibilities as to what you could go for in certain areas and color schemes. So I think that was an easier one to spec, especially the interior. Yeah,
officially speaking, you had pretty much any color you wanted, and then you could contrast it with 7 or 8 different stripe colors. You could go off menu, and they were fairly expensive to do completely custom colors, but obviously they're painted under the lacquer. They are beautiful. And while sometimes I wonder what it might have looked like with a slightly different shade of gold, perhaps, for me it's all about that historical link, that connection directly with the color scheme, with what the car, with how the GT40s were back in the 1960s. So the GT, like the other cars actually, more satin carbon fiber around the lower sections, full carbon body, and that was pretty much what was in my mind from the beginning. And then we brought it through, and I think you were okay with it. We talked a bit about gold wheels or not.
Yes, and I was like, no.
No, too much. That would have been overkill. I think with the slightly more mustardy gold, the ketchup and mustard of the colour scheme, the wheels might have been a little bit overkill. In a slightly lighter, more silvery gold, paler gold, it might have worked. Anyway, we went with the wheels in Le Mans Grey, which is the colour of the race team wheels, so that works.
I think it's proper Iron Man spec.
It is proper Iron Man spec.
We need to have like a life-size figure behind it.
And when I had the car out in California, I had dreams of trying to chase down Robert Downey Jr. to see if I could get a photo of him with the car, but didn't happen. Maybe in the future. Maybe we get it back out there. Senna, again, do you know what? We went backwards and forwards on this one a fair bit as well, because I wanted to do it cerulean blue, as I said earlier. That had been the plan. It was kind of my link back, the light blue, the flagship car, the most expensive and most powerful and most, I guess, impressive car. So I wanted to go cerulean blue. But when we saw the Senna, when this was first revealed, and you look at it now and you see all these edges and angles and crazy aggressive shapes, the brighter the color, the more they stand out, and arguably the uglier it looks.
Yeah, I remember when the car came out for the first time, we saw it in real life, we were just like, it's a great looking car. It's, form follows function. But there are certain aspects to the design where we were thinking, that could be a bit difficult. Let's see how we're going to spec that.
So part of me thought this could look really cool in Orion purple. And we actually went back a lot over that, of thinking, should we do this in the same color as the 675 LT?
But then this was always the sort of Shmee blue.
That was always the plan. And then, do you remember inquiring to McLaren about doing the satin navy blue carbon? As I talked recently in the costs of the spec options on this car video, I didn't expect that to be so, if I can say this, relatively affordable. I thought when I asked for that, they were going to come back with like £50,000 or something.
It's always nice to have a positive surprise.
It was a very positive surprise, contrary to some of the other options, as we talked about in that video. And if you haven't seen it, do go and check it out. Obviously, you could have had a full carbon body for about, I think, £185,000 extra, which I struggle with it because it's a lot of money. You could buy another supercar for that money, and you pretty much lose it all on the used market anyway. So what's the point in doing it? And you don't have a bright color, because tinted lacquer over black carbon is always going to be a dark color.
Yeah.
So for me, this was how we went, and we've got the contrast of the gloss black over the top and more satin carbon fiber. You could opt to have satin or gloss on this and on the GT, but I went with the satin. I just think it looks that little bit more contrast, that little bit cooler overall. We then go to the SLS, the controversial color decision.
That was really controversial. When you said that you're going to respray it, the messages were not so nice, to be honest.
Yes, how dare you?
The audience was quite upset.
How dare you respray a lovely silver SLS Black Series? Now, there was one Mystic Blue SLS Black Series out there in the world, and it had the original wheels. So if you take a look at the wheels on this car, I made them silver.
We saw silver. We didn't see the car, but we found it online. I think it's in Saudi Arabia these days.
It's moved around a bit. It was in Dubai at the time. It was for sale at Alain Class. So the car was, it was well photographed. We got to see what the color would look like. And this was actually the color that I had originally considered for the G63.
Yeah, and there are G-Wagons out there, and
Yes.
they look really good.
So this is how it all kind of links back around, because I'd picked Mystic Blue as a colour I one day wanted to do a car in. We'd been looking at it for the G63. As you said, we'd seen cars out there. But when we chose to do the G63 in a different colour, I was like, wait a second. The perfect colour to make this my own, to make this unique, is to go with the Mystic Blue. Hence we did it. I think it looks truly gorgeous. And I think it got your seal of approval as well.
It did. Or it does. I mean, it looks amazing. And I think for the SLS, I mean, it's a Black Series model, right? But at the same time, it looks so elegant and the color really suits it. And I love how it has almost like a slight purple undertone to it.
It's a little bit dirty right now, so we do need to get that cleaned up.
Yeah, we do.
Part of the downside of it being out in the rain the other day. But that is how it goes. Talking about the G63 then, let's come over to it. I know originally this was not your choice.
The car was my choice, but not the color. And I think that was the car where we had the sort of biggest disagreement about, because I wanted the complete opposite of what you went with.
You were more along the lines of black or white, basically.
Yes, white, tinted windows and red brake calipers.
G-Wagon
G-Wagon Spec, yeah.
Whereas my kind of idea with this was a bit of fun. Obviously it's topaz skinned, topaz skin, removable, peelable paint effectively. So it was a fun opportunity to create something totally unique to the G-Wagon in exactly the same colours as the Senna, hence the satin navy blue and the lighter blue. It's been on for over 2 years.
Yeah, it has done very well. I remember moving with it last year. That was actually quite exciting. And I think the color scheme also comes, as you said, from the Senna, but the idea was to have like an open trailer and then have the Senna behind it, and then have the satin navy blue and cerulean blue G-Wagon in the front and the same color scheme on the back with a Senna.
Well, that was the plan
trailer.
until the day we picked this up from topaz at the end of the topaz skin, and 20 miles later was when that mess happened. Literally on that very day. So the number of photos of the two cars together prior to 6 months later was, yeah, like one, which wasn't ideal at all. The fun thing with this though was to create something unique. Obviously it can go back to being a black car when the time comes to sell it, and for it to move on to a new home. In the meantime, the idea was that it would be unique, but the funny thing is about 3 months after we did this, along came a new color from Mercedes-AMG direct, factory available color for this car, called South Sea Blue, which looks exactly the same. I've not had this parked alongside one.
That's true. And there was a car at the IAA in 2019 in that color.
Yes.
And I got sent so many pictures.
Yes.
But I must admit, I've grown to like it in that color scheme. I have. And I don't know why, but it's like, it's this big, massive box and it stands out so much in this color and everybody just sees you on the road. And for me, being a small person in a big car that is very visible is always a great thing.
It's this massive blob of colour.
Yes.
Going past the Heritage though, we get to a car that I know you're not the biggest
Can we
fan
just
of.
skip it?
Well, we'll talk about it for a moment. The livery on the Yaris. I mean, I knew the Yaris would be a bit of a project. I knew as well that it wouldn't be a permanent addition in the garage. It was always going to be around for a period. I don't know how long it will be. So it's a bit of fun to have linked it back to the original 90s famous Celica livery.
No, I mean, I know where you're coming from, and I like what you did to it in the sense of it's important to you, you know, you played Sega as a kid and all of these aspects, but, you know,
it's the fun link back of it all. It's the fun link back and a bit of a story, which is unusual for me because most of the cars here are obviously a single colour or with a contrast colour. That's one of the few that's completely out there, we could say, but then I think it fits the character of the car. C63 Black Series, we haven't actually decided what we're going to do for the final spec of this.
I would quite like to change the colour.
Watch this space, as I always say. We'll have to see how that goes down the line. GTR Roadster, I can't remember how much we talked about this.
We talked about it quite a bit because, I mean, obviously we did the colour for the Pro, and then we were just like, so we have the white Pro, we have the blue G-Wagon, we want something different. And this colour looks so gorgeous. And we're just like, yeah, let's go for the
and
red.
I was reserving Solar Beam for the Black Series. That was already decided as well.
That was true.
The options for this were, again, super limited. I think it was 8, 9, 10 different colours we could choose from.
There weren't many, yes.
Black was out. White was done on the Pro.
There was a blue,
There was
blue.
a satin dark blue, but I
Yes.
didn't want a Magno paint. There was satin grey, satin, I don't know what others. I didn't want any of those. And it was kind of like, well, Hyacinth Red is left. I guess we're going Hyacinth Red. So that's how that happened.
But I think it suits the car very well. It's a very elegant shape, again, like the Black Series. And
But there's always, this is the thing, there's always, when we're choosing specifications, consideration to the other cars in the collection and the other future cars in the collection. So as we've just been saying with that, it's so much more what else is here, what else is coming, to create a very colourful garage. Lots of bright coloured cars, which on their own might be too much, but as part of the collection,
you like your Skittles.
I like my Skittles. They start to make sense. Hence doing something like the Midnight Purple wrap on the GT4 with the gold wheels.
We had seen that wrap and thought it looked amazing.
Yes. And in fact, came across some pictures of a car wrapped, I think, like this. I don't know if it's the exact colour or not, but wrapped in purple with gold wheels, and it was like, done, absolutely done.
Sold.
Yep. Back to the old school. This, obviously I bought this car back in 2010, originally, crazy, a long time ago, and light blue with a cream interior, a little bit feminine, not gonna lie, but back then it stood out to me. I thought it looked beautiful and I couldn't resist. So this really set so much of the blue, I think, theme through Shmee on 50 over the years. In fact, things like the intro on the videos have all pretty much come from that colour, that car, which is kind of funny when you think about it. M3, Isle of Man green.
We saw that in the studio.
When we went to do the preview filming with the M3, the new car, the new M3, new M4, when it was launched, they obviously presented it in Isle of Man green. And to be honest, I think the colour pretty much sold me the car.
Yeah, we saw the car in that colour and we were just like, okay, if we get one, it's in that colour.
But you put a stop to me doing the orange interior.
I did.
We did the silver interior because it was...
It was a bit bold. I mean...
Yeah. The orange interior on a green car was very out there. What about this spec?
Oh, I love
Beautiful.
it. I mean, yeah, you outdone yourself. I mean,
yeah,
the googly eyes.
You've specced it with some additional googly eyes.
50 horsepower more.
50 horsepower more? Nearly doubled, nearly
Yes.
doubled. It's actually, I forget the name, but it's actually called something grey. It's not silver.
Oh, it's not silver.
Well, it is silver, but it's not silver. It's something different. So also here at the moment in the garage, we've got the Taycan over that away, again in the green and gold. A lot of people commented at the time, why didn't I just buy one in green? They have actually now opened PTS, paint to sample, to be able to order a Taycan in whatever colour you would like. At the time, you couldn't. You could only get them in the colours from the factory, and I bought a car that was available from a dealer, so I didn't get to spec the car from new, and as such, I wrapped it in green as a result and made the wheels gold, which I think looks really cool.
It does look good, and I find the funny thing about this is this morning when we came to the barn, we actually had somebody asking us about it.
Yes, somebody actually at a traffic light asked us if that was oak green metallic and how you have that on a Taycan. It's very similar to that colour. I think one of the difficulties with EVs in general is that they're not very exciting looking cars, often. Not everyone, but lots are not very exciting. And there's something a bit more fun about giving it a standout colour scheme and giving it a bit of character through the specification. And obviously this car had a very high spec, so it's got some gold touches on the inside, so we added the gold touches on the outside, and we've recently installed the Xyrus parts as well for a little bit more carbon fibre and flair around the exterior, so I quite like all of that as well. GT500, bright green.
Yeah, you wanted it in bright green, and I guess that was that. But
I actually wanted it in yellow, but they don't make them in yellow.
True, they didn't.
So I had decided, given I've got a red Ford GT and an orange Heritage Focus RS, it would look really nice to have a yellow GT500. They have now launched the, is it called Grabber
Yellow?
Grabber Yellow, I
But
think.
it's not a very bright
No,
yellow.
it's a little bit more,
off.
yeah, it's a slightly off colour. So I don't regret that I don't have that, because it wouldn't be quite the yellow like these bright yellow balloons. It would be the kind of yellow I would want on it. So we went with the Grabber Lime, the very bright in-your-face green.
We also had a look at an orange one.
We did have a look at an orange one. We actually went to look at an orange one, thinking that the orange with the orange could look quite fun, because they're a slightly different colour. They're not the exact same orange. But this is, I suppose, one of the other things. When the GT Black Series is back here in Solar Beam, no two cars, other than the Senna and the G, which is not a permanent thing, are the same colour.
But you forgot something very important.
I did. I forgot the go-kart. I forgot your gift of the go-kart, which is also in exactly the same metallic cerulean blue.
Yeah, I think that looked really good.
It had to be done. No, when it comes to the specs going forwards, I love the variety. I don't want two cars that are nearly the same or about the same. The G obviously was a bit of fun matching it to the Senna, but fast forward a few years and the car will have been superseded or changed by something else down the line. For the time being, it obviously matches and it's a lot of fun. But longer term, any car that's going to be a permanent addition to the garage, I want to create something that really stands out for it, which is how we end up with something like the STO spec. And
the
talking
STO
of that,
spec is very out there.
we have, similarly to with McLaren, a very nice little booklet from Lamborghini ad personam, where they send out your paint samples, including the very wild Viola Bast. Now, there's only one type of car, I think, you can do a colour like this, and that's a Lamborghini, but it wasn't what I was originally thinking about for it.
No, you were thinking about a slightly different color, but I like what you said, the wild color, the wild type, because
Yeah.
I think that's what describes the color very well. And I think the Lamborghini is the only car that you can spec in a very audacious spec, I would say, because one thing that you have to think about is that the color should suit the character of the car. And if you have a very elegant car, you want to go with a very elegant color scheme. But with the Lamborghini, I feel like that's the only car where you can literally go out there. But you wanted something very tame, to be honest.
Yeah, originally I was thinking of the Diablo SE30, which is a much more softer pastel purple.
Yeah, it's a bit washed out.
But it's also, as you put it, quite 90s.
It's very 90s.
It doesn't suit a car with the modern craziness of the STO, the wild aerodynamics, the crazy radical aero wings and everything that you have all over it. And this, again, is going to be contrasted with a very bright yellow.
Yeah, I remember I suggested Viola Pacific, but you weren't the biggest fan, and then we kind of, I don't know, we settled on that one.
We did, and I have no regrets. This is going to look amazing. Viola Pacific has become, there are quite a lot of cars out there. I'm always trying to find something that's
new,
quite unique, quite, not totally unique necessarily, but not, let's say, a famous color. I say that having just done the specification of the SF90 in blue electrico, which is quite a famous Ferrari color.
That's true.
But I haven't seen many SF90s in it, so I think it will suit it quite nicely.
And it's a very elegant car with a very elegant color.
Yes, and we've given it a very unique interior as well, with the Sabia and the blue sterling. Now, cars coming up, Lotus Emira we'll have to do soon.
I know what you want to do with that.
We don't have many options with the Lotus Emira. First edition, it's basically loaded with 4 option packs and comes pretty much as it is. Outside of that, we'll have to see what we're going to be speccing next.
I can't wait.
I'm not quite sure at this moment, but for today I hope that's given a bit of an insight into what we're thinking when we're doing specifications about the overall package of the garage, about the overall appearance, and how it's very much a team decision.
Team decision?
Maybe what the boss says is generally what goes.
No, that's not true. It's a team decision.
To make the specs of the cars. Anyway, for today, that is all. Thank you for joining us. That's all for now from here at the Shmuseum. Until next time.